Because my clientele are pretty specialized people. They're everything from, some of the top CEOs to huge celebrities to, all kinds of people where, the it's not always even the money that's the determining factor. It's all these other things you have to understand that you
Hmm.
can't understand unless you have that relationship. It's kind of like if somebody was.
Let's go. Welcome to House Rich, the real estate show. We talk to average people that have done above average things in real estate. Today's guest is Nathaniel Pitchon-Getzels. He's the founder of the Getzels Group. He's 20 years in the game of real estate, has his own podcast, sits in a couple boards. I don't know if I missed anything about you, but going to have an interesting conversation about LA real estate. And going to have an interesting conversation. We're going to talk about a lot of things. So appreciate you joining us. Can you introduce yourself to the good folks that are listening?
Hey, everybody, I'm Nathaniel Pitchon-Getzels. I'm sitting in beautiful Los Angeles right now, and I am extremely honored to be on this great show. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. So I know at this point, you've been in the real estate game for 20 years. Can you talk about your journey? Like what made you become like a realtor in the first place? Like where'd you I guess maybe fall in love? Hopefully you're in love with the real estate
Oh,
by now.
yeah,
So
no, it is a love and a passion. And even though I usually tell people not to follow their passion because, it's like when people are drunk, they don't really make smart decisions.
yeah.
But sometimes when you make those quick decisions, it changes your life for the better. So I have a pretty deep background in education, and I've
All right.
taught in every level of school from preschool administrator up through college. I skipped first through fifth because why not? And I was I was a behavior therapist for a while. Everything was education based,
All right.
right? And I'm finishing my master's degree. I've done um, lots of research all over the world, or technically all over the world, but and published articles. Scholarly journals was like my thing. People would make fun of me because I talk about scholarly journals all the time. And I was finishing up my thesis, and I'm like, you know what? I've now realized I'm getting offered all these great jobs, and this all sounds horrible.
All right.
Like this does not sound good to me. So what I did is I sat back and I went, okay, what are the things, like what are my core values? What are the things that are important to me? And it was wanted to help people, right? Still, I approach every situation with how can I help? What can I bring to the table? Not what can I get from the conversation,
Okay.
right? So that was a core thing. I wanted to figure out um, how I could help people grow as humans. I wanted to have my own business, and also I call it my guilty pleasure at the time was Zillow. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when I was in college, we got our first property, and I realized that uh, purchasing was so much more beneficial than renting
Yeah.
from a financial standpoint and wealth building. So I went, okay, wait, I can now help people make the biggest or a large financial decision in their life. I can help educate and guide them, and for many of them, change their lives and their families' lives for generations by helping them learn to build wealth effectively, since we all know that our financial literacy in this country is extremely low
Yeah.
and nobody teaches these things. So I went, okay, well, I can still kind of teach, if you will. I can help people and I can incorporate my guilty pleasure. Also, while I was in college, I studied why people move, where they move, what makes people move, the psychology of moving, and how cities grow, which
All right.
were all things that I called my guilty pleasures at the time because I just enjoyed those subjects so much. I even meet people now in all places all around the country and even the world where I know things about where they live that they don't know, and they've lived there their whole life,
Okay. All
right?
right.
Or, oh, I know that city exists because of this, and then because that one was created because of reason A, well, that's going to happen again over there, so we should buy land out there because later on that land's going to be very valuable, or you know whatever it is. So because of that, everything of when I started in real estate, it wasn't about numbers. It wasn't about, calculations or formulas, which is important to understand,
Mm-hmm.
but it was all about relationship building and how to build the relationships with people and how to use those relationships to help them grow as humans. And, that's what my business is based on. And because of that, I think I've been able to build a very unique kind of business with a unique set of clients, right?
Okay.
Because my clientele are pretty specialized people. They're everything from some of the top CEOs to huge celebrities to all kinds of people where the it's not always even the money that's the determining factor. It's all these other things you have to understand that you
Mm-hmm.
can't understand unless you have that relationship. It's kind of like if somebody was to refer you a client, and this has happened, by the way, where you go, okay, I get a call, hey, I'm referring you this client, they're a $5 million buyer. Great. And if the first thing you say, or in the first sentence, you say, hey, great, this is what they want. Are you pre-qualified? And you don't build a relationship with them, they're just going to hang up on you and you lost that client.
Yeah.
So, but building the relationship, Chris Voss calls it tactical empathy. Mark Goulson calls it listening, learning to listen. But it's really all comes down to attuning with people. So my whole business is based on attuning with people so I can help them the most that I possibly can in their journey. So
okay, thank you. So I want to touch on a couple of things you spoke in there. First, I want to jump back. How'd you end up buying a house in college? Just curious, for property in college.
Well, what we did was it was a collaboration with my family as well.
Okay.
And so we split the down, and then I ran all the numbers and I figured out how we'd cash flow it. Basically, I didn't know any of the fancy words. I was just like, look, this is how we're going to make money on it. This is how we're going to make money. Because I was in education. I still thought I was going to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And, I was like, okay, so these numbers make sense. And then, we moved forward with it, and it really worked out very, very well. And also, initially I was renting, and I just thought, this is crazy. Even back then, rents felt high. I was working and going to college, and still it seemed like a struggle, even with roommates. And I went, okay, let's just figure out some basic math here.
Yeah. That's kind of like similar to me. So I didn't purchase a home in college, but yeah, when I got out of college, I was going into the Navy so I could use a VA loan. And so what my dad told me was to purchase a home. I was like, I don't understand why, but I guess it makes sense. I'm going to be renting anyways. I ended up like renting a room to one of the people on my ship. So it was kind of like the early house hacking before house hacking became a buzzword.
Right.
And then so you start this. So do want to get into like the working with the high profile clients, but so you start the business, and then how do you? Maybe this is a super long answer, but how do you start gaining traction to the point that high priority or celebrity clientele start reaching out to you?
Right. So it was quite to me, it was interesting because I didn't do anything I was supposed to do. Right. Like, it was a while ago, and back then they were telling you, oh, you want to door knock, you want to mail, you want to, do all these things. And I hate all that stuff. And I don't like, as one of my favorite clients always says, I don't vibe with it. Like I don't feel the vibe. I don't vibe with people that respond to that. Like, I hate that stuff. So what I did was, I got the license about 13 years ago. And so I've been investing for 20, but I got the license about 12 years ago.
Okay.
So that was, I realized I had a lot of time and not a lot of money when I started, because I just, was in college for a long time before that. And so what I did is I went, wait a minute, I'm reaching a lot of people with no money online, like on Facebook and social media. And so what I did is I really leaned into that.
Okay.
And I built a whole business, a relationship-based real estate business through social media. And, I did, that was the core of my business. And I kept, building relationship with people, getting referrals. So over time, I created authority online.
Okay.
And then I increased as I would increase my in-person base, I'd plug them into online. And so I keep making sure I post, and this is still important now for social, it's just you have to use a lot of money to do it correctly too now, is you create high value items that you're consistently putting out.
Okay.
And over time, people always think, oh, you're not going to get people who are high net worth online. Really? Where are they then?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I've literally just from some of my online social media posts, met some of my most wealthy clients because they called me because it was a friend of a friend, or they saw something and it did, and it felt authentic and real. And it was, because that's important. Whenever you post anything, it does have to be you. So, maybe it was a little silly, or I talked about stats because I'm like a stats nerd when it comes to like areas and how they grew, and like this went up this percentage or whatever. And they call me out of the blue, and, I don't know who it is. So I have to treat everyone the same.
Yeah.
And, so, I mean, some of the people I've met that way are literally worth over $1 billion.
Okay. So has anyone ever called you? You've been like, no, this isn't you. Like, prove it to me. Like, how does that?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's kind of like you gotta have a good filtration system that works quickly.
Okay.
Right. So, I always meet people, and then great. So you want to have a second meeting, or you want to move on to another level, because I want to meet them in person, because it's real important to build that relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like I said before, you have to build it. But once you start to build it, now that's great. We're friends, we're connected, we're tuning. But now I need to see the money.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah. That's gonna be.
So it's like, okay, great. Now we need to qualify you. We need to get a proof of funds. We need to do, whatever it is. Otherwise, I can't keep spending time working on a project. So the system is build the relationship as fast as possible, and then naturally guide the conversation to where they're telling you, oh, well, I better send you my proof of funds, or I better send you my pre-qualification. Usually on that level, it's proof of funds, or it's a letter from their from a financial manager or a CPA.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, that's gonna be one of my questions. So when you're dealing, I don't know if it depends how many millions, but so you watch like $1 million listings and stuff. Is every deal is cash? But if you watch that show, like is it typically financed or cash?
I've been on that show before. I've actually been on that show before. What were you asking me?
So are those deals typically like, so every deal $1 million listing is a cash buyer, but typically is it cash or financed, or how do those deals work in real life?
So, I mean, on TV, it's always sexy to save money, always cash, cash, cash. Now, there are a lot of cash deals when it gets down to the real estate side. However, very often it's not cash like you or I would pull out of our bank. It's where they either have a credit line, right, based on a business, or they're leveraging debt against a big amount of money they have in assets somewhere.
Okay.
Or they're doing an insurance wrap, right? An insurance wrap against a corporation. So they technically show up with cash or money, but it's really leveraged. It's just not leveraged against that property necessarily. It's leveraged against a business or a corporation or an insurance wrap.
Oh, okay, got you. And so how is the LA market in general? So like, so I'm here in Dallas, so I see a lot of Dallas stuff, and it seems like a lot of folks from California are moving here to Dallas. Is it still kind of wild bidding wars out there, just kind of like the rest of the country, or does it matter what price range you're in? Is it kind of more or less?
Yeah, so it depends. Like you're starting, as I'm sure you're starting to see in Dallas, you're starting to see a deceleration in the market.
Yeah.
Right. So the number of deals is dropping. Prices are still going up, but they're going up slower. So, last year in some of these markets, we saw over 20% gains.
Yeah.
Right. And this year, I don't think we'll see over 4 or 5% gains, which is still high because average is 3.5 here.
Okay.
So 4 to 5 is still high, but it's nothing compared to 20%. Right. So you're seeing a big deceleration. So properties are starting to sell more for what the comps show. There's the appraisals are much lower. People are being a lot more picky with the properties. If you have a hot property here, though, that's priced well, you're still going to have multiple offers, and it's going to sell very, very quickly. But it's as somebody said earlier today, this is not the time you want to be overpriced.
Okay.
While, last year you could be as overpriced as you want. That house is selling. Now you have to be kind of down back to earth. And it's going to be more based on what the other homes in the property in the area are selling, because it's not going to be 20% more in a year. Gotcha. The number of mortgage applications is down here. The number of sales, it has dropped, but prices are still going up. So it's interesting because there is still a very, very, very large appetite here in LA for homes and home buyers. And there's more people moving here actually from certain cities, not as much in Texas. But if you look at it, the majority of people in LA that moved to Texas made less than $130,000 a year, which is the minimum that you really need to afford a house in LA. So they moved there, which is great because they could buy, and they're out of the renter pool here. But the appetite for purchase here is still very strong. Now, if you look at the ultra luxury, right, you're even starting to see a slowdown there. And when I say ultra luxury, I mean 80 million and more.
Okay.
Right. So you're starting to see some of those properties actually not sell and go to auction, and then sell for significantly less than is expected. Like if you saw the one, right, that one went to auction and sold for, I think it was 127 million.
Okay.
Which originally they expected to, the builder was expecting to sell that for half a billion dollars, 500 million.
Okay.
And then they listed it for 295, and then it sold in auction for 127.
Okay.
Right. And I saw another house that was listed recently for 80 million. It was a gorgeous house. It was one of the premier houses, but then it also ended up in auction and sold for 40 million.
Okay.
So I think that section is going to get harder hit, because it's just a different zone. I think a lot of the 2 to 5 million buyers are becoming $1 to $2 million buyers. But if under $1 million, you still can't touch anything. It's still on fire here. So
Roger that. And so I think I spoke over you when you said it, but you said you were on $1 Million Listings. You were on like a couple episodes, or?
I was on one episode. They used one of my listings on there. I was on there. It was several seasons ago. But I had this wild house listed on Sunset Plaza. It looked over the entire city. Each room had its own theme. So there was an Egyptian room, there was a white room, there was a casino room, there was a movie room, and then there was a 2.5 story floor to ceiling, wall to wall disco, like basically a discotheque like club under the house. And then under that, there was a grotto that has like bodies crawling out of the wall at you. So it was a really wild house. But, I mean, just like every other show, they're all manipulated. You see what you want to see. It's not real estate. Like I'm actually, it hasn't posted yet, but I made a video recently that said, I open it with, you have no idea what I do, because everything you see on TV that these agents do, not only is it mainly not real, but it's not right. Like it's not the right thing that agents need to be doing, right? Like running around. What I mean is like a lot of these shows show the agents running around, super stressed, worried about this deal, worried about that deal, just like frazzled, lost, super stressed, trying to figure out if you're a good agent. I mean, yes, it's a stressful job. We all know that. It's a stressful career, and there are stressful aspects of it, but it's stressful, and that's good, because if it wasn't stressful, you wouldn't get paid to do it, number one. Sure. And then number two, if you don't know how to deal with that stress, and you're fighting with people, or you're getting rude to people, or you're not, then you're not able to serve your clients, because I have highly stressful deals every day. But because I'm a seasoned agent and I've seen these things, either I already know what to do, or I know where to go to figure out the right answer, right? Like a lot of these shows, I mean, some of them, they fake the whole thing, right? I mean, some of them, they've already bought the house and they're like, we don't know which house we're going to get.
Yeah.
And they create all this drama, and that's good for TV. But in real life, you want to give your client, you want to tune with them, you want to become partners with them, and you want to create a white glove service where you take the stress, but they're not stressing out as much as possible. You know what I mean?
It's not a good TV show that if you're having a calm conversation with your client or sending them an email, that doesn't get views.
Right. Well, it was like, years ago, my friend, they made a show about his house, and not his house. They made a show about his life. And one of the scenes is them like driving down a runway in a Ferrari, trying to plug something into the bottom of an airplane. And I'm like, wow. And it's based on his life. And so I asked him, I'm like, so like, how real was that? And he goes, no, we did need to download this. And, I was behind my computer with some very exciting HTML downloads that I couldn't wait to happen.
Uh-huh.
Right. But it's kind of like that. Like the real life of what we should be doing is we're in the background negotiating, not, in some bar screaming at someone like, you need to take our offer. Right? Which is kind of the equivalence of what's going on in these shows,
Yeah, gotcha. It's interesting. So like the house you mentioned, so like a crazy house like that, like how do you go about even like pricing something like that? Because I assume there aren't any comps for a house like you described.
Yeah, and there's a few different strategies, right? I'll explain a few of the strategies and then how I do it. A lot of agents, they'll tell you, well, we just priced it what the client wanted. You know what I mean? Like, well, I was in a house the other day and it's $25 million. And I'm looking at this house and I'm thinking, well, there's no way this house is worth, over 15 million. And I asked the agent, he goes, hey, it's what the client wanted, So you just kind of throw it out there. Now with that house, what I did is, the way I do it is I look at the market. I look at basically if it was a vanilla boring house, just the square footage, right? I look at that. And then I look at, are the unique factors of it pluses or minuses? Because sometimes these wild things that people do actually make the house worth dramatically less.
Yeah.
Right. So first I look at, okay, if it was a vanilla house, what's the square footage selling for? What's this kind of house selling for? Then I look, is there a view? What's the view worth? Okay. Now we have a base. Now we have somewhere to start. Then I look at, okay, what are like the wild factors of the house, right? And this house, for example, had a crazy pool with an insane view over the city. Mm-hmm. So that was a plus.
Yeah.
But it had like 3 or actually like 5 crazy levels to it. So there was a lot of stairs. So that was a minus. And it had a grotto, which is cool, which is a plus, but it was hard to get to. It was kind of weird when you got down there and, there's bodies, literally physical bodies that were designed by artists coming out at your body, like trying to grab you. So it's kind of weird. So that's a negative, right? So I pretty much assign a value to each thing. And I see how other unique homes are selling. I see how the vanilla homes are selling. And I take the special factors, if you will, and assign values to them and price the house. And then if you market it well, which we market things very, very, very aggressively. Mm-hmm. And what I do is I also kind of have a system where for houses like that, they're so unique. You need to, I think of it as being a sniper with a scope of the whole world. And I need to be able to hit the right people at the right times wherever they are. Mm-hmm. Right? Because most marketing in general is like a shotgun. It throws everything up at the wall and you hope you hit the right person in the mess.
Yeah.
Right. But when you have a house that's especially above 5 million, 10 million, $20 million, the number of people in the world that can afford that shrinks dramatically. Mm-hmm. And then you have to find that person at the right time, at the right, price, who wants happens to want the house in the place you have the house. So to do that, you have to really be much more strategic in how you reach people, which is also something I love about the internet, because we all know everything's on the internet.
Yeah.
You know, everybody else says that, and that's true. And that's why you have to be like a sniper to cut through all the noise to hit the right people with the right things at the right time.
Yeah.
So, you know, and when you do that, the price, you'll know if it's right or wrong very quickly because you'll get a lot of feedback.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you do that? 'Cause like I said, my perception of celebrity real estate is just through TV. So it's like, hey, I got this $1 million house, $5 million house in Malibu. I'm going to send it out to LA, Shanghai. Like how do you find the right people? Like, how do you even build that network in the first place?
Well, yeah, right. There's three parts of it. There's your private network, which you build over time and relationships. And whenever I sell a property in that price point, right, those people probably know other people who are in that price point, or they're more likely to than people who are not in that price point, right?
Okay.
Not always, but very often, if you have $100 million house, you're not the only person who owns $100 million house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
different circle.
yeah. So you leverage the private networks that you have, and then you can go to your agent networks around the world that you've built over time. A lot of agents don't realize that the majority, I think it's 80% or close to it, it might be more than that actually now, but are done with another agent, right? 80% or more of deals are done with a second agent. So those agent relationships are really important. Back when I started, I was a part of this group. I was one of the early members of this group called the Young Real Estate Professionals, which now is a part of NAR, and it's called the YPN, the Young Professionals Network.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Okay.
Yeah. So that started mainly here in LA, was one of the founding chapters. And people would always ask me when I was new, why are you spending so much time with other agents? I don't get it. I don't get why you spend so much time with other agents, especially local ones, right? Like, a lot of people can understand why I spend time with agents from around the world, because referrals and mutual business and different ideas and masterminding, that makes sense to most agents. But people can't understand very often why I spend so much time with agents in my own market. And part of that is because you want to build the relationships with the other agents who might have similar buyers for the listings that you have, and vice versa, right? I've created a lot of deals that way, and a lot of off-market deals have happened that way, in fact. So that's one way. The second way is we have a set of AI tools that tells me who's most likely to buy certain homes in certain places.
Okay.
And so then I electronically target them through email, and then I can also target them through their social channels. And then the social channels have a different set of criteria I can set to hit those people in the different areas. So it's several tiers, and it's not that different from selling like a normal house, if you will.
Gotcha.
But also there's a lot more privacy involved, and
Yeah.
You have to qualify people, especially if you're selling a celebrity piece of property. You have to qualify everyone before they step foot on that property, because you get a lot of people who are just obsessed with celebrity.
Yeah.
I've even had people who just are obsessed with money and want to come and pass fake bank statements and fake this and fake that, and they have fake identities just to come see a house. I honestly, at first it befuddled me, because I said, how does somebody have this much time and interest just to walk through a house? They did a lot of work to get here.
Yeah, it's a hobby for some people.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's wild. But so, there's some other, when you're selling it, there's a lot of other factors that you don't deal with on a regular house. But marketing is very important. And also, you don't want to have whatever or whoever that celebrity is overshadow the property, because obviously the buyer isn't buying the celebrity. They're ultimately ending up with the house, and they get a fun story of who used to own it.
Gotcha. So how do you vet looky loos versus actual buyers? I mean, you're making sure you're looking at all, like, before it even comes in the house, they have to provide like pre-approval, proof of funds, and all that stuff.
Yeah, proof of funds. I need to know their name. In certain houses, I have to have them sign an NDA.
Okay.
And prove that they are the person they say they are.
Okay.
like with a copy of their ID, for example, and a copy of their bank statement that has the same name, because sometimes it doesn't.
All right.
You know, and that's just to get onto the property. And that's actually sometimes when I love that when they have another agent, because if I know the agent, I know it kind of is another insight of who are we dealing with?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it a long-standing relationship? Is it new? Is it, you know what I mean? So it, yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha. And I wanted to jump back to something you talked about before when you were talking about some people just list homes because that's whatever the buyer says they want to list it at. So how do you typically deal with that? Because sometimes just listing a home way above is a waste of your marketing. Like how do you deal with that? Because those people I assume are used to people not saying no. CEOs and so forth.
Well, and whenever I build a relationship with the person where I try not to just feel like a tool to them. And by a tool, I mean, this thing that they're using to sell their house. I try to create a real relationship where they feel like I'm an asset, not just to sell the house, but as an advisor, right?
Okay.
In all things real estate. And so, I'll sometimes I just have to go to somebody and say, look, do you want to list your house or do you want to sell your house? Right? I mean, I'm going to spend a lot of money and a lot of time trying to sell their house. And I explained to them, I'm only going to do that if there's a real chance that it's going to sell.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if I'm not confident that it is going to sell, I'd rather not take the listing. While a lot of agents, their business plan is different. They will take every listing and they put it on what another agent and I call low power mode, where it's just sitting in their inventory. They have so many listings. They're not putting a big push on it, right? They're doing the kind of the bare minimum, if you will, to get it out there. But I create a custom marketing plan for every property.
Okay.
And if it's, one of the luxury ones, we create a destination around it, right? A whole identity for it. So I'm not going to do that with a house that just has no chance of selling.
Yeah,
I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, if you're new, you just need listings in your repertoire and you're going to use that to try to get other listings. I get it. And that's a strategy. I mean, I see people who get these listings and they know they're never going to sell, but they figure I'll get 3, 4, 5 other deals out of having this listing sitting there. So I'm going to do it. For me, I invest so much into each listing that I don't really love doing that. There has been a couple times that either, the client comes to me and goes, hey, after I spent the money on the marketing before it's publicly listed or something. So, I've been put in a situation once or twice, but overall, I just will walk from the deal.
Okay.
You can't be scared to walk from a deal.
Gotcha. And so for the non-luxury, so let's say I'm a one of the people that make only $130,000 to live in LA and can afford a starter home. Like, do you work with, when I say starter home, I guess starter home is like what, 500, 600,000 in LA?
Like 6, 7, yeah, 600,
Okay.
700, yeah.
So how is that any different as far as going about your first purchase, maybe as a starter home in LA and like that lower price bracket?
Yeah, well, there's a few big differerences, which number one is price becomes a lot more important, and your payment and your interest rate, right? And then the appreciation is always important, but when it's a starter home, you already have a plan of moving out of it, right? So your 5-year plan is much more important than in like a luxury estate that the real big ones really only sell in down markets. And that's when these things tend to trade hands.
Okay.
So when you're looking at 10, 15, 20-year things. So you're running much shorter timetables on them to make sure that your client's going to be happy, because you're going to stay in contact with that client for 5 years, and then you want to resell that house and you want them to be happy on the back end too.
Okay.
Right. So you have to really understand the micro neighborhoods, because LA is made up of all these little pockets of it's almost like different cities within this big city.
Yeah.
Right. And because it's so spread out, it's even more than other cities I've been to in the world. Right. So, if you're in the wrong side of the boulevard or something, and you bought a house and you figure in 5 years I'm going to flip it for what the houses on the south side are selling for, or vice versa, you're going to get yourself in some trouble. So you have to have a lot of knowledge of not just market trends, but neighborhood trends.
Okay.
Right? What's
Okay.
coming in there. And a few years ago, there was an area that they built a new mall and prices went up 20%, but then they couldn't fill the mall. So then prices went dramatically back down. So you have to understand the bigger things. Or like there's an area out here called Palmdale.
Okay.
And there's nothing out there. There's very little out there. But years ago, they announced that an international airport was going to be built out there. And all these people started flocking there. You know, it drove up the prices, but it was never built. So then the prices went way back down and people got stuck in those homes. So for first-time home buyers, you have to be much more careful about not getting stuck in the home because you are wanting to move it. And usually, you know, if you only own one home, that's probably your largest financial purchase.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And you want to set yourself up so you can create generational wealth, not get stuck in a house or be house rich and money poor.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, very often you look at it versus the rents. Like rental prices are much more important in those calculations as well. As you know, since you do, you know, you're very in touch with how loans happen. So if you're spending, you know, the rent to own ratio is much more important in that case, because you want to be building that equity and also spending less money to do it. Or you're spending more money, but you have a plan to execute it. That's the biggest mistake people make in general in every level of real estate, is they buy with no plan. And
Yeah, I think I literally did a video on that today or yesterday. But basically, your first home should be a dream home, and make sure, like, always think about a renter when you're purchasing that first home, because you know what would a renter want with their property. Yeah, that's what I tell folks a lot. But like you said, folks want the the American dream, the white picket fence, and then your DTI can go up to 50%. And yeah, some people becomes a mess. When I see people with like that 50% DTI, I'm just like, I guess those are the guidelines, but you're probably going to be having a hard time, saving or moving on from that transaction.
Yeah. Well, it depends also. I mean, theoretically, hopefully they're increasing their income over those first few years so that when they go to sell it, you know, they have equity and they're much more comfortable, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And so, but before and kind of like the pre-chat, you mentioned you own properties in a couple other countries. Like
I own all kinds of properties.
Okay.
So, I bought I own properties in countries I've never even been to.
All right. How do you go about doing that?
So I studied the markets, right? They were deals that were brought to me. I studied the markets. The numbers made sense. I talked to all the right people, so I understood the full picture of what's going on. And the numbers penciled in this one, as my friend Shaheen often says, you want suicide margins. And this deal had suicide margins, which basically means the numbers are so good, no matter what I do, I can't screw it up. Even if I were to die, I can't screw it up. It'll still be okay. It'll still make money. So because I'm also very passionate about STRs right now. So short-term rentals.
Okay.
And so that property, it's on the coast in a country that opened up U.S. investment just a few years before. Mainly the companies that are investing in this city, which is Batumi, Georgia, are U.S. companies. And it's one of the best places, according to, I think it was Forbes, to invest in that part of the world.
Okay.
And so suddenly to have perfect credit, I just needed a U.S. passport, which I have. And I was able to buy a property for not very much on U.S. standards. And the short-term rental numbers made sense, so that was great. My purchase price made sense, so that's great. The cash on cash, the equity building, the projected equity build there was very, very, very good at the time. So I'm like, okay. And then the dream is that the country keeps developing, and that the cash on cash and the cash flow is even better than the projection. So I always look at things like, what do I know for sure? what do I think is likely, and what's like the dream, right?
Okay.
And if all three of those are green light go, like look good on my numbers, then I do it,
Okay.
right? And if it's only the dream, I definitely don't do it. But if it's like, the basic thing looks good, and then what I think's going to happen is iffy, then the dream's out. It depends how good that thing that I know is going to happen, the returns on portion one is, how
Okay.
those returns look. But so this one, now what's happened is the property value there is skyrocketed. And it isn't a little bit, it's near a place in the world that isn't ideal. But because of that, actually, a lot of people are flocking to this area even more,
Okay.
because it's just south of Russia, near Ukraine. So it's, people were looking at me like, oh man, you must be kicking yourself. And I said, no, I'm actually much better off than ever, because the values have gone up. There's more people, there's more renters. And also it's an STR. So you're still going to have revenge travel. And now you're going to have more people come to Georgia than ever before, especially Batumi. And they're making that city kind of like a mix of Miami meets Vegas with a little bit of a flavor of Dubai in there.
Okay.
And so everything looks like Miami. It's all brand new high rises, glass. They put in 4 casinos, and it's a very kind of cool, interesting culture there. So that's all I really needed to know. I mean, look, it's kind of like when people go, oh, I don't want to invest in that building because it's ugly. Who cares? The numbers pencil.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, are you buying it to tell people, look what I own, or are you buying it to make money?
Gotcha.
So that was one that I'm very excited about. That they're almost done building it, so we're going to start really seeing the returns. But the value has skyrocketed already. And when you invest, one of the beauty things of investing in other countries, especially developing countries, is big countries, they have ups and they have downs, they have recessions, they have huge gains, and there's a lot of safety, but there's also big drops, right?
Yeah.
Some of these developing countries, if you look around the world, they haven't had a real recession or a drop in real estate in 20 years.
Okay.
They have so much room to grow. They just keep growing. It's like if you look at the growth of a teeny tiny company or a giant corporation, that giant corporation might go up and down, might grow 4 or 5%, and the time that tiny company grows 20%, 30%.
Yeah.
So that's one of the other advantages of doing that. So that's one of the countries, and then we have some properties in Latvia as well. So
okay.
And then I have properties all over the U.S. as well. One of those houses I actually bought for $8,000 in the state of Georgia, ironically, same name. And then, I bought properties all kinds of funny ways, though. Like there's 10 acres that I own here in LA that I bought an auction on eBay.
All right.
Right. Most people don't even know you can buy property on eBay, but there's all these different auction sites. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's real. It's a real thing. I mean, when you buy in auctions, you obviously have to check the title and, if there are liens against the property and all that sort of stuff. So there's a different due diligence you have to do, but it's quite interesting. And, that I just land bank, but then I realized I could cash flow it because there's this site called, what is it called? It's basically, it's the Airbnb, but for camping.
Okay.
Right. And so I have campsites on raw land that this company markets. And so I literally cash flow a property that I don't even go to that has 0 facilities on it. And they get the insurance. They do all the bookings. It's just like Airbnb. It's amazing. And so, now I cash flow all these different funny properties, and, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, cool. That's something I never thought about, because I gotta look it up, because I know my sister's boyfriend, fiance, one of those, I think it's boyfriend still. But yeah, he has he came across he came upon 30 acres out in Maryland, trying to figure out what to do with it. Yeah, I gotta look that up. That seems like something that she
HipCamp is the app I use.
What's it called?
HipCamp, HIPCAMP. It's because you're like a hip camper, And
Okay.
they do everything from, it's not just camping. They do RVs, they do cabins, all that sort of stuff. But like, to me, it's just so amazing. I literally, my taxes are less than $50 a year, I think, on that piece of property.
Uh-huh.
And, I have people on it. There's probably people there right now. I haven't looked at the app today, but almost every weekend, I have people there who pay to just go and camp on it. And I mean, granted, maybe if I was a more avid camper, I'd understand it more.
Yeah.
But they told me they have properties where people hike for 45 minutes just to get to the property and camp on it, and they pay to do that.
Yeah,
To me, look,
it's a niche for everything. Somebody's
there is.
interested in something. So yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, I'm like, look, we've worked for thousands of years on inside. I don't know why people would go back outside.
Yeah.
But to eat different strokes, different folks.
Yeah,
I support it.
true.
I support it.
Mhm.
I like camping when I'm in a hotel room. But
Yeah,
it's great.
I enjoy hiking a little bit, but yeah, I need to be inside once the sun comes down. So many bugs, too many things howling outside and all that. So yeah, I need to be with something with the wall that the big bad wolf can't blow down if it comes to it.
Absolutely. I'm with you, but I have another, I help my friend with another property. He just does vans. He converts vans, parks the vans on raw land, and gets a couple $100s a night sometimes, depending on the season. So there's all different ways to leverage land. I mean, there's land banking, which is great because over time you're going to make that money back eventually. But land banking is a slow process.
Can you explain what that is?
Well, land banking, I just mean by that, I mean buying land and using the land as your bank. So, right now is the perfect example. With inflation the way it is, holding money in the bank is not a smart place. So you want to put your liquid cash somewhere that hedges inflation, which to me, I am a little impartial, to be fair, but I think most of the world would agree with me. The best way to protect your money, to hedge inflation, is put your money in real estate.
Yeah.
And so then instead of keeping your money in the bank where you don't know where it is necessarily, you could lose it, could be stolen, et cetera, you have inflation to worry about and all these other financial factors. You literally land bank, meaning you buy land and use it as your bank to secure your money.
Okay.
And so land banking, it's a great strategy long-term to create generational wealth.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Learned a lot of stuff during this episode. I feel like we can talk for like another hour about all this stuff. I'm super interested about the purchasing land outside of the states. That's always super interesting to me how people even think about, hey, let me purchase some land in Georgia or Latvia. I've never even thought of that. So I got one final question.
Yeah.
So this may be a little bit different. You see, like at a different price bracket than a lot of folks. But let's say I give you $1 million, and you have to you have a week to spend it on something real estate related. What would you do with it?
Okay, I know exactly what I'd do with it.
All right.
And we just did this, in fact. So that's exactly the right amount of money. So I'd go and I'd find roughly a property for $1 million.
All right.
And I'd put 10% down, right? And I would find an STR property that, meaning short-term rental property, that I could cash flow with a pretty big margin. So we actually just did this. One of my partners did this. He bought a property for about $100,000. Well, he bought it for $950, but you figure closing costs, whatnot, you're putting down $100.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to gross $250. He's going to gross $250 a year off that $100,000 he put into that house, and he's going to net about $130,000.
Wow, that's a good ROI.
Yeah. So I'd find something that just has a big ROI, because right now my big focus is cash flow, because I have a number in my head of passive income that I want to make. And once that number is hit, it always goes up, by the way, so I don't know if I'll ever hit it. But
yeah.
But once that number is hit, then I'll focus more on cash, because obviously every investment you make, you look at either as a cash flow or as a cash on cash focused, right? And right now, I think the best thing to do is focus on your cash on cash, because then if the value of it does go down a little bit over time, you're covered, right? With so much instability right now, I think over time, let's assume we're at the top of the market, because we're already seeing things decelerate. So the big worry is buying a property and that being worth significantly less later. Well, you cover your bets. To me, you're covered if you only have a little bit of money in and you're cash flow positive on that property.
Yeah.
So you're safe, right? So that's exactly what I would do with that. I'd spend that $100,000 on a short-term rental that I could have a nice cash flow, good ROI on, and then in a few years, I'd pull money out against it, or I just save that cash flow for another property and just rinse and repeat until the market changes.
Awesome. Sounds like a plan. So hopefully I have $1 million I'll be giving to you. You can give me some good return.
Oh wait, were you giving me $1 million or 100,000?
Oh, $1 million.
Oh, you were giving me $1 million.
Oh, something else now.
I would do the same thing, just on a bigger scale.
All right.
I'd buy a short-term rental with $1 million. That would be like a $5 or $6 million house.
Gotcha.
That I short-term rent, because then I could also do a bunch of concierge services, which you make 20% on. I would do. I actually have built some funds to do this, so I know the numbers really well, and the ROI is insane.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. So, where can folks find you? Where folks contact you at?
The best places are my Instagram, which is Getzels Group, GETZELS GROUP, Getzels Group, my last name. That has all my contact information on there. That's the best thing. Or, just call me, text me. I'm always here.
Right, Roger. So I'll have all that info in the bio on the YouTube and the podcast. Do you service outside of LA, or are you mostly focused on the LA market?
I have teams that focus on a pretty large area, like theoretically, and then I have referral partners as well that are kind of extended teams. So if you want advice or help anywhere, I can help.
Roger that. Sounds like a plan. So wherever you're buying, you can reach out to them to get help there. So once again, appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the show. And there's no outcast, so this show is over. Or no outro, sorry. This show is over.
There you go.